For a long time, I was only aware of the existence of the shows of Power Rangers and gradually whatever else of the franchise. But until the most recent time when I found out about it, the comics based on the very shows was the furthest of things from my mind. I never imagined that Power Rangers can actually be read, albeit like the comics of DC and Marvel. I never read them, and I doubt I ever will. But I saw a few illustrations on the internet. But based on what I found out, many of them are entertaining to many people who read them. Even now, I never imagined how impactful those comics must have been. In this video, I'm reasoning if they really are worth looking at and how much about them have to do with it. I don't want to take too long on it, but I'll be as honest as I can. And I got my needed information for this. These comics are created by mostly Boom Studios. And I'll simply say that that company is big in its own right. The many comics from them are based on many licensed popular media properties, Power Rangers among them. Speaking of Power Rangers, I don't know who or what company permitted them to make the comics based on that franchise, if not Toei, since Toei owns Super Sentai and stuff of Super Sentai is seen in Power Rangers. But I hope that the people of Toei aren't all that bothered with what is written and illustrated in those comics. The answers I got were quite fascinating, but I don't want to sound too repetitive with them here. It turns out that the series of comics are their own series in their own continuity, although they still reuse stuff seen in the shows. There are plot lines in the comics that are not canon to the shows, as well as featured characters exclusive to the comics. Seeing that many people who read the comics like them, it appears that this set of storylines and featured characters actually work for the most part. I suppose that series of comics has its own authenticity that works the way it does, which results in it doing something better than the shows. So I read, comics are a natural fit because they can be cheaper to produce than television shows, easier to experiment with, and better for long-form continuity. And so these Power Rangers comics gave the creators an opportunity to do things that television shows usually couldn't. Certain enough, the most pronounced of which is to implement such stories that have more room for character arcs, expanded backstories, and world building, to explore the lore in ways that budgets of live-action television series and episode length often limit, and to keep the Power Rangers brand active in another medium. It stands to reason that they were targeted towards the people who grew up with the Power Rangers shows and their concepts and preferred a better method of storytelling, as well as being into comics. And who could guess that there's a lot of that people? Now, if the events and characters in the comic books were canon, then I'd have to accept them. And I'd have to get them and read them on a regular basis. Not only that, but the comics would have to be made by the same company producing the shows, among other strict conditions. And a company like that isn't easy to find. And how successful would the comic books be then? But then there'd be too much for me to focus on and fit together into understanding the whole space-time continuum which all the events take place. And I don't mean for my fandom to be so vast in that term. So I guess the comics are successful as they are. That, and I actually don't mind the events of Power Rangers in the comics being in their own continuity. I tell you what I think of the comics after reading them, but honestly, I don't need them. Not to mention, I'm generally not generically into comics, and I'm not incorporating comics in my fandom. Nevertheless, there's an audience for them, especially for how interesting is an amount of intended things the comics do that make them worth looking at. Not that they have to read them, and I don't think they have to watch the shows in order to read them. But there is something of them that they can favor for sure. So in the end, the series of Power Rangers comics earned its place in the world. What those comics do, they do it just right for who they're for. Whoever reads those comic books and enjoys them, I won't oppress them for it. But let me ask you, did you ever become aware of the comics of Power Rangers? Have you read any of them? Have you enjoyed the ones you read? And do you think the plot lines and characters from them should be incorporated in the shows? If you do, which ones? Comment your answers, and thanks for watching.